Welcome to Candlewick Library. I'm Cheryl. Today I'm going to be using Stephen Hassan's B.I.T.E model to ask the question, is the Mormon Church a cult? Dr. Stephen Hassan is a world-renowned expert on cults. He is a former cult member, and his B.I.T.E model is internationally renowned. It is considered accurate. It is not a biased thing. This is not something that someone has created about the Mormon Church. This is something that is used across the board internationally. Recently, a very prominent Mormon, Glenn Beck, even used it on his radio channel and went through it for political reasons. So this is used by Mormons. This is used by everyone that talks about cults. And I read through this a couple of years ago and was kind of astounded at how many things can mark off. I'm going to read the very beginning of his B.I.T.E model information. Many think of mind control as an ambiguous, mystical process that is difficult to define. Mind control refers to a specific set of methods and techniques, such as hypnosis or thought stopping, that influence how a person thinks, feels, and acts. Stephen Hassan developed the B.I.T.E model to describe cults' specific methods to recruit and maintain control over people. B.I.T.E stands for behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. So that is what B.I.T.E stands for. There are going to be things listed in all four of these sections that pretty much any religion or church is going to be able to mark off as yes. Families could mark off as yes. Workplace environments would be marking off as yes. There are going to be a few things that across the board are going to be in harmless organizations and situations. However, it is once you mark off multiple of all four areas that you really have to ask yourself, is what I'm a part of a cult? And so I'm going to go through them and I'm going to say, from my perspective as a former Mormon, whether these things should be a yes or a no, and why and how. So first, I'm starting with behavior control. Number one, regulate individuals' physical reality. I'm not even 100% sure exactly what that means, but individuals' physical reality would mean, I guess, what you believe in around you. That I wouldn't say so. I would say that comes as part of being a Mormon because of, your community kind of becomes your church. But I don't think that I would say that is something that is policed. So I would say no. Number two, dictate where, how, and with whom the member lives and associates or isolates. When members of the church are on a mission, both number one and number two are 100%. You are told who you can be with. Missionaries have to always be with their companion, always. And you're also told when to wake up and where you have to live, all of those different things, who you are allowed to visit. You are put with the companion. You don't choose a companion. So when you're on a mission, yes, that 100%. When you are not on a mission, I would say it varies because you are told to stay away from people and not associate with groups that go against the church's policies or speak out against the church. There was even a question in the Temple Recommend interview that asked if you associated with anybody that did those things. So I wouldn't say that one could be completely marked off for every member, but I do think it has been something historically that has happened more than it is right now. But you definitely are told what kind of people you should be spending most of your time with. It's just, again, it's not necessarily policed for the every person. Number three, when, how, and with whom the member has sex. Of course, yes, because it's only supposed to be when you're married and with your spouse. Number four, control types of clothing and hairstyles. This one is an interesting thing because this used to be something that was more than now. When I was in my late teens and in my 20s, I actually kind of rebelled against something that we were told to only have one piercing in our ears, not two, and no other piercings, no tattoos. You were told that your hairstyle should be very conservative and stuff like that. And so it was really looked down on to have different color of hair, different hairstyles that maybe were more punk. And that's definitely a cultural thing, but it was given by the prophet not to have more than one earring piercing, which is funny because I never wear earrings anymore, but I do have two holes and I had my belly button pierced. And so those were things that were very against what I was supposed to be doing. When I got married and went through the temple, I started feeling really guilty about it. So eventually I took out all of the extra piercings and only used the one. You were definitely told when I was growing up what standards to have for your hair and your clothing. I had friends that were never allowed to wear anything above their knee or sleeveless clothes at all. I was allowed to wear tank tops. Thankfully, my parents were not super strict about that. but there definitely were some things that they wouldn't have allowed me to wear. Now, the For Strength of Youth pamphlet that goes out to the teens is the most recent one has taken out all of the things about the hairstyles and the piercings and the modesty and the tattoos. As far as I remember, I read it when it first came out, and it felt like they had completely changed the language on that so that people could feel free to get those extra piercings or have tattoos or have different hairstyles if they want to. There was a story about, I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was in the last few years, of a man who had dreadlocks, and he worked in one of the temples, and the temple president fired him or told him that he had to shave them off if he wanted to work there. And he was able to go to higher church authorities, and they were able to say, no, don't, you can have that hairstyle. And so I think that that has been changing over the past few years. However, the clothing is 100%. When you are on a mission, you have certain clothing you have to wear and have the little tag on. That has also changed in the last couple of years, where the girls are actually being able to wear pants now in some areas, not always the dresses. As far as controlling your types of clothing, every endowed Mormon, meaning anyone who has gone through the temple, has to wear garments. And the garments, they function as underwear. It is a t-shirt and shorts, basically made out of cotton or a lycra type of material. They come to just a few inches above your knees and to like right here on your arm, so just a couple inches below your shoulder. And so you cannot wear anything that shows those. And that's why I knew a lot of people that wouldn't let their kids wear sleeveless clothes or things that were a few inches above their knees, because even though they weren't wearing garments yet, they made their children dress as if they were. But just recently, within the last couple of weeks, they have actually announced new garments, and they have sleeveless options and like a skirt or a slip. And they say right now that that's going to be for hot or humid areas, because I think that they've realized that people are just not wearing the garments like they want them to. There have been a lot of talks over the past year about wearing your garment night and day like you're supposed to, wearing it properly, not altering it for your clothes, but altering your clothes for it. And they realize that a lot of people are not wearing them, especially a lot of women in their 20s and in this new generation. And so they're having to alter that a little bit, but they're altering it so that they can still control it, because they realize people aren't going to wear them the way they want them to. Then they need to make sure that they can make them in a way that people will still wear them. I predict that it won't be very long before it's not just for hot and humid climates, and everybody is going to be wearing the sleeveless new garments. So number 4 is a 100% yes, sometimes more than others, and sometimes it changes, but they do try to control your clothing. Number 5, regulate your diet, food and drink, hunger, and or fasting. Yes, every first Sunday of every month is Fast Sunday. Everyone is supposed to fast from everything, water, food, everything. And then at sacrament meeting, the first hour of church service, it is testimony meeting, where members get up and bear their testimonies. As many people that want to, anyone can get up and bear their testimony. So you do have to fast that first Sunday of every month. Then also, as a Mormon, you are not allowed to obviously do drugs and smoke cigarettes. That's not a bad thing. You are not allowed to drink alcohol, and you are not allowed to drink coffee. You do have dietary restrictions as a Mormon. Number 6, manipulation and deprivation of sleep. I would say if it's manipulation of sleep, I don't think so. The deprivation of sleep, when you're on a mission, I think because you have to go to bed at a certain time, wake up at a certain time, that can be, but I don't think that it's an on purpose deprivation of sleep. So I would say probably not on that. Number 7, financial exploitation, manipulation, or dependence. Yes, every member who wants to have a temple recommend has to pay 10% tithing of their income, and it's supposed to be of your gross income. You do have to pay a full tithing, and a lot of people will argue that online and say, well, it's voluntary. Sure, it is. But if you don't do it, then there are privileges you won't be able to have, including the most important privilege, which is going to the temple, having a temple recommend. You cannot get into the celestial or highest level of kingdom and be with God and Jesus all the time and with all of your family if you aren't temple worthy, meaning you will not be able to go and be with your family forever if you don't pay 10% of your income to the church. So they're sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars, and people that hardly buy food for their families are paying tithing. And in fact, there's been multiple general conference talks. General conference is a conference twice a year where everyone watches church from home, and it's the leaders, the highest leaders of the church that speak. There have been multiple talks there about how people were blessed for having to choose between buying groceries and paying their tithing, and then they chose to pay their tithing. So for financial exploitation and manipulation, 100%, you believe you have to do it or you're not going to be with your family forever. You have to go at the end of the year to meet with your bishop to make sure you've been doing it. They used to call it tithing settlement. I don't know what they call it now. I don't remember. Number 8, restrict leisure, entertainment, vacation time. I would say no to that. I think when you're in a leadership position, that is probably something that is controlled, but for most people, it's not going to be. There definitely is talk about not watching R-rated movies or not watching certain kinds of entertainment, but that's not really policed as well. So I would say no to that one. Number 9, major time spent with group indoctrination and rituals and or self-indoctrination, including the internet. 100%. It used to be 3 hours of church on Sunday. Now it's 2 hours. There's also meetings throughout the week. There's also other things that you're supposed to do. For women, it was visiting teaching. Men, it was home teaching. Now they call it ministering, where you are assigned people in your congregation that you're supposed to go meet with or talk with or email or something. It used to be visits in person. They've become a little bit more loose on that. You have, callings that you're given. So you have to spend a lot of time preparing for those callings and doing those callings, which could be teachers, it could be, lots of different things. You're supposed to be reading your scriptures, which when Mormons say scriptures, they don't just mean the Bible, they mean Bible, Doctrine and Covenants, Pearl of Great Price, Book of Mormon. And so you're supposed to be spending time reading those every day. They used to put more emphasis on a family home evening where you were doing lessons with your family in your home every Monday night and not going out and doing other things. There used to be more emphasis on that. I haven't seen that for a long time, which is sad because I actually think that's one of the good things. But then also you are, when you have a calling, there's things you have to watch. There's general conference where it's 2 days worth of talks to watch. They do occasionally different things online that members are encouraged to watch. So there is a lot of time spent in indoctrinating you and in rituals, you're supposed to go to the temple regularly. So yeah, yes, that one for sure. 10, permission required for major decisions. I would say no on that, except for, again, if you're a missionary or if you're in the leadership of the church. Number 11, rewards and punishments used to modify behaviors, both positive and negative. Yes, this is something that I maybe on the surface, it doesn't seem like it would be, but it is because you will be rewarded for your good behavior. If you do everything you're supposed to do, then you get your temple recommend. If you get your temple recommend, you go to the temple, you get to be with your family forever. If you don't do those things, then you are not going to be with your family forever. So that is a huge reward and punishment hanging over everybody's head. Also, if you do something that is against the church standards, then you will be told that you cannot take the sacrament. A lot of churches do communion of some kind. The ones that we've gone to over the past couple of years, most of them have done it maybe once a month. But in the Mormon church, you do it every single week during sacrament meeting. And so if you do anything that is against the church values, then you are told that you are not allowed to take the sacrament for a certain amount of time. And the bishop is the person that decides how long you don't get to take it. And that is something that is a huge punishment. And it's also a behavior control in and of itself, because everyone around you will notice that you don't take the sacrament and know that you did something wrong. So you have to go to the bishop. You have to confess any sins that you do. And then you are punished for many of them. It can be taking away your temple recommend. It can be just taking away the sacrament. It depends on the severity of the sin. So that one is a yes. Number 12, discourage individualism and encourage groupthink. Yes. I think that one's kind of a no-brainer. That's obvious. You are encouraged to not think for yourself, to be told what you believe and why, and what not to look at and what not to believe. And we're going to tell you who the bad guys are. We're going to tell you who tells you the good information, where the good information comes from, where you should and shouldn't look for things, and don't go off and do it on your own. Number 13, impose rigid rules and regulations. Yes, you have a lot of things that you're supposed to do and not do. It's very important that you're at your meetings all the time. There are a lot of rules and a lot of regulations. Number 14, punish disobedience by beating, torture, burning, cutting, rape, or tattooing or branding. No, thank heavens. Definitely not. There was violence in the early church under Brigham Young for people that didn't obey things, but that definitely is not something that is in the church doctrine, and it's not something that happens now. Number 15, threaten harm to family and friends. That is, again, the same answer, unless you want to saying that they won't be with you in heaven is threatening harm, but I don't think that would count. So no. Number 16, force individuals to be raped to rape or be raped? No. Number 17, encourage and engage in corporal punishment? No. 18, instill dependency and obedience? Yes. You are supposed to be dependent on the church for your community. There have been so many talks in the last couple of years throughout the whole history saying, if you leave this church, you have nothing. You are leaving God. You're leaving Christ if you leave this church. They equate the church with God. So if you don't have this church, you have nothing. So you become dependent on it, and they do instill obedience. You are supposed to do whatever the leaders tell you to do and not question. 19, kidnapping? No. 20, beating? No. 21, torture? No. 22, rape? No. 23, separation of families? Yes, a little bit. I would say that this is not a common thing. However, you do have the missions. So when my brother was on his mission in the 1990s, we were only allowed to talk to him on Christmas and Mother's Day. You could write letters through the mail, but if you wanted to talk to them on the phone, it was only twice a year. And he was gone for 2 years. So I didn't see my brother for those 2 years. Nowadays, they are actually letting them email, so it's a lot faster for communication. And so that has changed, but there is still the physical separation. There are also people that go on missions when they get older. My in-laws went on 2 missions back to back. They were gone for a few years, and we hardly were able to talk to them at all. So there is definitely a separation in that way, but then there is also the separation later. Are you going to be with your family? You're not going to be with your family. If one of you is not doing the right thing, you're the weak link and you don't get to be together. I also have heard many stories of people who, while they were on their mission, their families lost their faith and left the church. And they were told by their mission presidents and other people in the church to go and live with other people when they got home. Don't go and be with your family. It's not a safe space for you now that they've left the church, and speak out against it. I heard a story a while back of a girl who was a teenager, and her parents both left the church, and she was being told at church by her young women's leaders, by her bishop and everybody, oh, you're the good one, you're so good, don't listen to your parents, don't communicate with them, don't talk about stuff. And so there definitely is a separation of families that happens in the church, and a encouragement of being separated from those in your family that aren't following what they're supposed to do or speak out against the church. I've definitely had it myself, had family members that have stopped speaking to me or don't speak to me very often because I speak out against the church. Number 24, imprisonment, no. And 25, murder, no. Again, some of those things happened in the earlier church, but not right now. And so it wouldn't count for whether the Mormon church is a cult today. So that's all the behavior controls. As you saw, there were definitely some that were not applicable, but there were more that were than there should be. Information control. Number 1, deception, meaning they A, deliberately withhold information. Yes. B, distort information to make it more acceptable. Yes. C, systematically lie to the cult member. Yes. So yes to all 3 versions of deception. They have deliberately withheld information about the history of the church until they couldn't do it anymore. And even then, they're still trying to deceive, to hide some of it. One of the prophets of the church even ripped out something out of a diary so that nobody would know about it. It was later taped back in. When you see it on the church's website, you can see the tape marks. They do distort information to try to make it more acceptable. Oh, Joseph Smith had a 14-year-old wife, but it was normal back then to marry older men and marry when you were only 14, which it wasn't. But they will say things like that. They will distort things all of the time. And systematically lying, yes. Many of the current top 15 church leaders have outright lied. And most of the members don't know that. Because if you say that, they just immediately assume you're lying. And they don't know that the prophet right now actually has been caught in lies publicly multiple times as a prophet. And so they are always lying. Number 2, minimize or discourage access to non-cult sources of information. 100%. Let's go through the kinds that they say it includes. A, the internet, TV, radio, books, articles, newspapers, magazines, media. B, critical information. C, former members. D, keep members busy so they don't have the time to think and investigate. E, control through cell phone with texting, calls, and internet tracking. Okay, so with A, yes, they do try to tell you what things you should and shouldn't look at in all of those areas. B, critical information. Yes, because you can't have access to all of the critical information since they lie about it. C, former members. Yes, again, they have told people repeatedly over even the last few years to be careful about those of us, not to listen to people who are non-believers. And keeping members so busy they don't have time to think and investigate. Yes, callings take so much time. E is the only one I would say no to. The controlling through cell phone with texting, calls, and internet tracking. As far as I know, they don't do that. However, yes, when you're on a mission. Number 3, compartmentalize information into outsider versus insider doctrines. Yes. A, ensure that information is not freely accessible. Now, a lot of the information is now on their website, but it is still hard to find. And since they don't encourage members to go look at it, they just say it's there. People will just assume that since it's there, then it's safe, then they don't need to worry about it. B, control information at different levels and missions within the group. Yes, you would know certain things the higher you get. C, allow only leadership to decide who needs to know what and when. Yes. Number 4, encourage spying on other members. This one is a little bit interesting. So A, impose a buddy system to monitor and control member. When you are on a mission, yes. And then also when you have a calling, there's a lot of callings where you're in it with a group. B, report deviant thoughts, feelings, and actions to leadership. Well, you do have to do your own, obviously. But I would say that in our everyday life, it isn't necessarily talked about being encouraged, but it is something some people do. But it would be encouraged on a mission, but also at BYU. If you go to one of the church schools, they do have an honor code and people do turn people in, and you are encouraged to turn other people in. C, ensure the individual behavior is monitored by the group. So they do keep track of when you are or are not coming to church. If you are or are not going to the temple, you have a barcode, they scan it, they know who's going to the temple, they know which temple you're going to. They know if you show up at church because they do attendance. Things like that are definitely kept track of. Number 5, extensive use of cult generated information and propaganda, including A, newsletters, yes, magazines, yes, the church has its own magazines, journals, audio tapes, videotapes, YouTube, movies, and other media, yes, to all of that. B, misquoting statements or using them out of context from non cult sources, yes. I find that to be one of the funniest things that I've learned in the last few years is that so often they will use quotes from somebody in church history that left the church or spoke out against the church or things in it, and they will use the faithful quotes from that person. But then if you tell people things that that person said about other things, then they will say, well, you can't trust that person because they left the church. Okay, well, you just used a quote from them to make your point that was a faithful quote, but now you're saying that something they said at the same time doesn't count. Like they definitely pick and choose. And I think a lot of people are guilty of that. And so you have to be really careful that you say, yeah, he did say that, but he also said this. And they will also take people that are considered anti Mormons or ex Mormons and the things that we say and take them out of context as well to make us look bad. Number 6, unethical use of confession. A, information about sins used to disrupt and or dissolve identity boundaries. B, withholding forgiveness or absolution. Or C, manipulation of memory, possible false memories. I don't know about C. I would not be surprised if that happened. And I don't know about A necessarily, but I think so because there have been people that have gone in to confess to their bishops and then end up getting abused by that bishop. And withholding forgiveness, yes, because the bishop is telling you how long you have to go before you can be forgiven with not taking the sacrament and all that. So every single point of the information control has yes. There were a couple of sub points in each of those where I said no or maybe not, but most of those I would say that it is a yes on everything in information control. The T is thought control. Number 1, require members to internalize the group's doctrine as truth. Of course. And A is adopting the group's map of reality as reality. Yes. Instill black and white thinking. Yes. C, decide between good versus evil. Yes. D, organize people into us versus them, insiders versus outsiders. 100%. Number 2, change the person's name and identity. Not in the average membership, although you do call each other brother and sister, but I don't think that would count. But when you go through the temple, you do get a new name. If you watched my video about my first time going through the temple, you will know that that was one of the hard things for me when I left the church, because I thought the way it was pitched to me was that new name I got in the temple was my real name in heaven before I came to earth. And then I found out that every girl who went through the temple the same day as me got that same name. There is a group of names, one for every day of the month, And depending on what month, what day you go through, that'll be your name. They do give you a new name when you go through the temple. You don't go by that name, and you're not supposed to talk about it to anyone. I wasn't even allowed to know my husband's name until after we weren't members anymore, and he told me. And so it's not used as a name in even when you're in the temple, but you do get it. Number 3, use of loaded language and cliches which constrict knowledge, stop critical thoughts, and reduce complexities into platitudinous buzzwords. Yes, so much. There are so many buzzwords in the LDS church. They have so many things that throughout the years that have become little platitudes that you use that can make you stop thinking certain things. And you are told when you start having negative thoughts about anything to sing, certain hymns or to say certain things. And the prophet right now, Russell M. Nelson, he is really good at coming up with little bite-sized things that he says at one general conference, and within hours, Deseret Book, a store that is, sells church things, will have things that you can buy with that on it. People will be on Etsy selling things that say that on it. Like, it becomes something that you then see everybody talking about as if it has been around forever. One of his most recent ones was Think Celestial. And so it's reminding you whenever you stop to question the church or to question anything, think celestial. So think of the celestial kingdom, and that will stop you in your tracks from doing or thinking or researching or whatever you aren't supposed to be doing. Number 4, encourage only good and proper thoughts. Yes, you are only supposed to have good thoughts all the time. If you know any Mormons in real life that are very active, you will know that they tend to in public put out a very positive, happy, almost like a perfect persona, because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be happy and not be talking about our problems and all of those different things, just thinking about the good all the time, avoiding contention. So if you bring up something about the church with a member, you will be accused immediately of starting contention, of being angry, of all these different things. And sometimes, there have been times when people have said that, and I am angry in the moment, so they're not wrong. But it's like you are just supposed to run away from any feeling that feels negative or bad, and you will say that it makes you feel dark, and I'm having dark feelings because it makes you feel bad, because it's not a happy thought, and you're supposed to be staying in those good and happy thoughts. Number 5, hypnotic techniques are used to alter mental states, undermine critical thinking, and even to age regress the member. I don't think so. Number 6, memories are manipulated and false memories are created. I'm sure it's happened, but I would say no to that. 7, teaching thought-stopping techniques, which shut down reality testing by stopping negative thoughts and allowing only positive thoughts. And that's exactly what I was just talking about a minute ago. So yes, and this says including A, denial, rationalization, justification, and wishful thinking. Yes, 100%. B, chanting. You do chanting in the temple during the temple ceremony. C, meditating. I think that that's not necessarily something everybody does, but it is encouraged. I was taught to meditate in young women when I was a teenager. D, praying. Yes, of course. E, speaking in tongues. That's not something that's really done a lot now, but it definitely was in the early church. There was a lot of gibberish being called speaking in tongues. And F, singing or humming. Again, I said a minute ago, you're encouraged to sing hymns and all that. 8, rejection of rational analysis, critical thinking, or constructive criticism. Yes, 100%. I've talked about that. Number 9, forbid critical questions about leader, doctrine, or policy. Yes, obviously, you are not supposed to question your leaders. You are not supposed to question doctrine. You are not supposed to question policies. I've said this before. You can find the video of it. It's not hard to find. The first counselor of the church right now, he will be the next prophet, Dallin H. Oaks. He is on record as saying it is wrong to criticize the leaders of the church, even if you're right. So, can you imagine being if somebody does something wrong and you are not allowed to say it, even if you're right, that you're the one that's sinning? If you say, hey, you just stole something, well, yeah, but I'm the leader of the church, don't criticize me. That is so sick. And so that's 100%. Number 10, labeling alternative belief systems as illegitimate, evil, or not useful. Yes. And this is something that if you know a lot of Mormons, you might not know this because they have minimized this a lot in the last few years. They are trying to be seen as just another Christian denomination, really hard right now. But when I was growing up, it was like us versus the Christians. And that's something that has definitely changed in the last few years, that they're trying to seem like they're more like everybody else. but it used to definitely be an us versus them with other belief systems. And in fact, the temple ceremony used to have a minister in it, and he was a bad guy. So it was definitely something like that. They also say other people can baptize, but it's not a real baptism because they don't have the true authority. We have the true authority. We have the priesthood. So we are the only ones that can actually baptize or give blessings and things like that, because nobody else has that authority. In fact, Brad Wilcox, he's in the leadership of the church, a lower leadership position of the higher leaders in the church, and he is used by the church for a lot of things. He had a talk a few years ago where he said that everybody else is just playing church. Number 11, instill a new map of reality. That kind of goes with the very first one of the first section, where I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I think it means just like the reality of what you think about, what you believe in. And so if that's true, then yes, because it does tell you what to believe in, but I'm not sure. So I'll say a maybe on that one. So again, that's almost every single one on thought control. The last one is emotional control. Number 1, manipulate and narrow the range of feelings. Some emotions and or needs are deemed as evil, wrong, or selfish. Yes, 100%. Number 2, teach emotion stopping techniques to block feelings of homesickness, anger, or doubt. Again, yes, you're not supposed to be doubting anything. You're not supposed to be angry. You're supposed to be happy, and you're supposed to avoid contention at all costs. Number 3, make the person feel that problems are always their own fault, never the leader's or the group's fault. Yes, you've heard me talk about that on here before. If you've watched any of my Mormon videos, I felt like every single thing that seemed wrong to me or that I didn't like was my fault. I felt so messed up so much of the time during my time as a Mormon. I always thought I was in the wrong when I didn't like something or something fell off. Number 4, promote feelings of guilt or unworthiness, such as A, identity guilt, B, you are not living up to your potential, C, your family is deficient, D, your past is suspect, E, your affiliations are unwise, F, your thoughts, feelings, and actions are irrelevant or selfish, G, social guilt, H, historical guilt. Yes to all of those. Number 5, instill fear, such as the fear of A, thinking independently, B, the outside world, C, enemies, D, losing one's salvation, E, leaving or being shunned by the group, F, others' disapproval. Again, 100% yes to all of those. 6, extremes of emotional highs and lows, love bombing and praise one moment and then declaring you a horrible sinner. Yes, especially when you are new to the church. If you are investigating, if missionaries are coming and talking to you, you're going to be love bombed by everyone. And when you're getting baptized, love bombed by everyone. And it's going to be huge because they want you in. Everybody wants you to become a member, not because the members are thinking of themselves as a cult or want to, you know, trying to bring people in for nefarious reasons. It's because we believe so strongly that we have the only truth and that in order to save you, you need to be part of us. And so we want you in. And, you know, it's like give new members a job immediately, those kind of things. And so there is definitely love bombing. And then there is going to be that rejection if you are doing the wrong things. 7, ritualistic and sometimes public confession of sins. It's always public confession of sins because you are going to a bishop and sometimes to a stake president, and sometimes you have to have a meeting where it's a bunch of people. It's not necessarily something you have to do in front of the whole church, but again, if you're not taking the sacrament and you're not allowed to do some of the other activities, then everybody's going to know. Number 8, phobia indoctrination, inculcating irrational fears about leaving the group or questioning the leader's authorities. Yes. A, no happiness or fulfillment possible outside of the group. Yes, those words have been said. B, terrible consequences if you leave. Hell, demon possession, incurable diseases, accidents, suicide, insanity, 10,000 reincarnations, etc. Not the reincarnation part, but yes. In fact, when I was a member, if something bad happened to me or anyone in my family, that would just be a trial or a test we were going through. Now that we have left the church, if something bad happens to us, it's because we've left the church. C, shunning of those who leave, fear of being rejected by friends and family. Yes, and it's not an irrational fear. I have been shunned and rejected by family and friends. D, never a legitimate reason to leave. Those who leave are weak. Yes, they've said that about me. Undisciplined, unspiritual, worldly, brainwashed by family or a counselor, or seduced by money, sex, or rock and roll. If you go online and you look at Mormon sites, they are going to say anyone who left is because they wanted to sin. I see that all the time. Either we wanted to sin or we didn't ever have a testimony, we didn't want it bad enough. And when in fact, most of the people that I know that have left were people that wanted it the most. Most of us were the people that when we were a member, we were like super devoted members that did everything that we could to try to do it right. And so none of those things are actually true. E, threats of harm to ex-member and family. I would say no on the E, but every other point, yes. So out of the 4 sections, behavioral control, information control, thought control, and emotional control, I would say that it is 90 to 100% on information, thought, and emotion, and about a little over half on behavior. So I think that if you're going by just the B.I.T.E model and you are being honest with yourself, even if you were a Mormon, you would read this and you should be able to see that yes, the Mormon church can be considered a cult. It's a hard thing to say. Even as a former member, it is a hard thing to say, to call it a cult, especially when so many people I love are members of it still. But, nobody joins a cult believing it's a cult. I don't think most people stay in a cult believing it's a cult. You don't see it until you allow yourself to see it. And I 100% believe that the Mormon church is a cult, not just a false religion. Again, I've said Dr. Steve Hassan's B.I.T.E model is accepted by everyone. And these are his points. These are not mine. These are not things I came up with. And you can mark off almost every single one of these. So hopefully that helps if you have questioned whether it was or not. And you can find his resource for this on Freedom of Mind Resource Center. That's his website. And you can find all this information and more.